For a good part of my life, I was always fond of luck-based games, especially ones that involve spinning in some way. For a long time, up until last year, I used to play a lot of Slotomania. I liked the luck element that it had, even though most of the time, I would be losing coins. But occasionally, I would get that really big win, and I really liked that. It felt worth it, even though in some cases, it was not. The joy that those wins brought was why I played it for a long time. My first exposure to Jackbox was a set of games I played back when I was on the Fox Discord server, around 2020-ish, where we played games from Pack 6 like Joke Boat, Role Models, and Trivia Murder Party. In early 2021, I got into it for real when one of my favorite streamers would host them every Friday, and I got to play along. When I saw a video of the Wheel of Enormous Proportions back in September of 2021, and I heard about the spinning elements, I knew from the start that this game was going to be one of my all-time favorite Jackbox games to play. And when I got to play for the first time in October, I was right. I loved playing this game, and I think by now, I probably would have racked up nearly 200 of these games, plus a good number on a mod of the game called the Wheel of Enormous Trolling, where the host of the game trolls you instead. If you've ever played the Wheel of Enormous Proportions, you would have definitely known about the host of the game as this gigantic wheel who knows everything and has lived for thousands of years. Perhaps you've played this game a lot, 10 games, 100 games, maybe even more, and you start getting a little, I'll put this lightly, bored of the host. Perhaps because they're a bit condescending at times, awkward.
So let's get you some more points, okay?
Or you're just bored of their voice. And after all the games I played, I certainly felt the same way. Now don't get me wrong, in my opinion the host is really good, and Jackbox has done a really good job with it. Honestly, I don't think there was a way they could have done it better. But even so, I felt like I wanted something different. I came to the insane decision to replace the wheel's voice with a different one. And by different, I mean a text-to-speech voice.
More specifically, the MLG text-to-speech voice, which is what you are hearing right now.
So let's embark on my journey to replace all of the voice lines in the game to this new, and hopefully better, MLG voice. One of my main inspirations for this idea was the Wheel of Enormous Trolling mod I showed you before. It used the voice from the vanilla wheel, which is okay, but after a while it didn't feel like it fit right with the theme of the game. So instead, I devised an idea to swap it out for the MLG voice explained earlier. There are a lot of challenges that I'll have to overcome to make this happen. For one, I have very little experience of modding games, let alone modding Jackbox games, but since I have a little bit of software engineering knowledge up my belt, I feel I could figure this out. Thankfully, the wheel is actually a really easy game to mod. For example, if I wanted to change the point requirement to win, I can just go into this JSON file and there it is. All I need to do is change this number from 20,000 to something else and boom! I changed the point requirement to win in literally like 30 seconds. There's a lot of other stuff you can modify in these JSON files, but for this project, I don't need to touch them, so I'm gonna leave them alone for now. Another thing is that all of the voice lines in the game, actually most of them, but I'll get to it later, are exposed in the files as audio files in the OGG format, which also makes things easy. I can open them with VLC and I can hear what they sound like. But there is one small issue. When I looked at how many voice lines are in the game, it turns out there are over 4,800 voice lines total. This was going to be a monumental task. If I had to do these manually, this would take weeks if not over a month to accomplish. So the real question is, do I have to do them manually? Or better yet, how much of this can I do automatically? So naturally, I came up with the idea to create a piece of software that will help me generate these voice line files automatically. But that only ended up spawning more questions though. How do I get text-to-speech to work? How can I get the text-to-speech voice I want to work? How do I get my program to output these voice lines to an audio file in the right format? How do I get the text I need to generate these audio files from the game? How can I make my program generate these audio files in such a way that they can be patched into the game easily? What does this mean? But before I go there, I want to make sure I can actually change these voice lines. So to get things rolling, I went through the first 15 voice lines in the game manually and replaced them with TDS voice lines. I used a program called SEPI5 TDS app, since it allows me to place in some text and have it generate a WAV file with the TDS saying that line. If you remember, the voice lines in the game are in the OGG format, so I need to convert them over to that format. I used Audacity to convert them over. Then, I overrode the original files with the new ones with the TDS in it. I started up a game of Wheel, and lo and behold, it did work.
Tap, tap, tap on your answer buttons now before time runs out.
Now it's time to really get things going and figure out how to do the other more than 4,800 lines. Now that I know that this is actually possible, I opened up Visual Studio, created a new project based upon a C#.NET console application, and I got the main stuff set up. Just a fair warning, if you don't know anything about coding, you might have a hard time getting through this next part, but just bear with me. I'll try and explain things the best that I can. In short, I'm writing my program in C#, which is a language I have a lot of experience in from all of the work I did on projects with the Unity game engine. I did the usual thing that a lot of programmers do when they start coding something, and started off by printing "Hello World" to the console just to ensure everything compiles fine and works as it should. Fantastic, now let's really get going. Now, I needed to figure out how to get text-to-speech working. After searching around, I found some documentation on the Microsoft website that point to a speech synthesis module within the system library, and was exactly what I was looking for. So what I did is I imported the library into my project, and in the main method I created a new speech synthesizer, made it say something, and...
This is a test of speech, or whatever.
And it works! I just figured out how to make my program speak stuff. Amazing! That addresses the first question that I had. Now I need to figure out how to get the voice I want to work with the program. This took me a while to figure out, until I looked back at the documentation and saw that there was a method that would return a list of the installed voices on my computer. So, nervously, I wrote some more code that would print the names of the installed voices to the console, and to my relief, it is there. Whew. Now I'll just select that voice using this method and... Oh, wait a second. I made a typo. And...
Hey, does this thing work? Hell yeah, it does.
It works! I was really excited when I heard the MLG voice coming out of my program that I made. This is huge. And it's my second question checked off the list. And the best part is...
I can put anything into the speech synthesizer, and it will say it. Isn't that fun?
Now that I've got the speech synthesizer speaking in the voice that I want, now let's address my third question. How do I get this program to generate an audio file that contains this speech? And guess what? There's a method that does exactly that too. It's almost like this library is made just for me and this project. I'm specifically looking at this method. It takes a string, which is a file path. If you've ever seen that long line of text at the top of the File Explorer in Windows, that's what a file path is. It is a long string of text that points to a specific part of your hard drive or SSD. For the speech audio format info, that controls the parameters of the audio file, the samples per second, the number of bits per sample, and whether the audio file is stereo or mono. I won't go too much into detail about it, but in short, it controls the audio quality of the output file. In my code, I called this method, which will set the speech synthesizer output to an audio file on the desktop, and when I tell the speech synthesizer to speak, it should say the prompt I give it, and save that to an audio file. Fingers crossed. Okay, there's an audio file there. Let's play it.
This is a test of exporting text-to-speech voice lines to an audio file.
And it works like a charm. It took me a lot of Googling to make this work, but finally, we've got question number 3 checked off. Oh, hold on. The output file is in the WAV format. Remember, it needs to be in the OGG format to work with the game. So I need to figure out how to convert that WAV file, the speech synthesizer outputs, to the OGG files the game can read. Oh, great. Yeah, this was going to be tricky. I looked at the documentation of the OGG format, and yeah, this was a little bit over my head. So I looked a little deeper and found this Stack Overflow page containing pretty much exactly what I was looking for. Don't mind if I copy and paste this code real quick. Don't put yourself down too much if you have to do this, by the way. Anyway, I did make some changes to the code, but other than that, let's see if it works. This was after fixing a couple of issues, by the way. And look at that. Not only do we have an audio file, but it's now in the OGG format.
This is a test of exporting text-to-speech voice lines to an audio file and converting it to the OGG format.
And it plays in VLC just fine. Now I can officially cross off my third question off the list. Fantastic. Now we have a program that, when given a prompt, will use a speech synthesizer to speak that prompt and have it be saved to an audio file that can be read by the game. Oh, how far we've come. After I got this working, I turned off my computer and went to sleep for the night. When I woke up, I started figuring out how to address these last two questions, getting the program to fetch the specified text it needs for each voice line from the game, and having the program create the audio files in such a way they can easily be patched in the game once created. I needed to do some research. One thing I know about this game is that it has subtitles, both for the questions and for all the rest of the lines too. That's cool, but what I want to figure out is where the subtitles for each of these questions are stored, since I know for sure they gotta be somewhere, right? So I looked into the game's files, specifically where the questions are stored, and I noticed that in each of these folders that have these numbers on them, there exists a data.jet file and the respective voice lines for that question. Looks pretty promising so far. Looking into the jet file, I'm surprised to know that the stuff that it contains is plain text, formatted similarly to a JSON file, and lo and behold, there they are, the subtitles for that question sitting right there in plain text. And there's also some helpful formatting as well. The subtitles for the prompt voice line always follows this part specifically, and same for all the others. And by the looks of it, each question can have up to 4 different types of voice lines. One that plays before the question is announced, the intro audio. One that announces the question, the prompt audio. One that plays after the question is announced, the follow-up audio. And one that plays after the question, the outro audio. And so I devised a plan. My program will go through each question individually. It looks in the jet file of each specific question and extracts the subtitles for each voice line type from the jet file, which was done by looking for a specific key which comes before each specific voice line and removing everything after it. I then input those lines into my speech synthesizer code and have it generate the audio files for me. To make it so that the voice lines can be patched into the game easily, I have the program create a set of directories that are structured similarly to the game, and place the audio files the program creates into the places relative to where those audio files should be in the game. And here's the code I put together to do just that. I have it set to do the select all that apply questions. When I run the program, it will create a folder on the desktop and place all the audio files within it. It takes a few minutes to run, but after it's done, I can explore it. When I look into the folder, I can see that all of the questions are there, and in each folder, the voice lines are there too. I can click on one of them and hear what it says.
Which of the following are actual questions asked in Trains Drops of Jupiter?
Looks good. Let's go to another folder. All the voice line types are there.
Ooh, there are some players in this house. I know you're thinking it. Yes, I do know all the dance steps.
And they have the lines they should have. I think this program actually works. I should also mention that these files have to be named this way, otherwise the game will not detect them. Now I have to figure out how to create the audio files for the other question types. Thankfully, the numerical, this or that, and matching questions literally use the exact same format as the tapping questions. I just need to change some paths, and bada boom, 4 out of the 6 question types are done now. Now I have to figure out what to do for those last 2 question types, the what am I thinking, guessing questions, and the writing question types. One thing to note, don't forget to write and subjectively yours the wheel, Both fit under the writing question type, so I don't need to do something separately for those. Alright, let's go do the guessing question type. I went back into the game's files and opened up one of the guessing questions. I first noticed these clue audio files and how they are numbered, and when I looked into the jet file, I've noticed a fifth voice type exclusive to the guessing questions, the reveal audio, which play just before the wheel reveals the answer to the question. So technically, there's 5 voice line types. After that, I see the subtitles for each of the clues, and they are numbered as well. Very nice. So for the guessing questions, I do the same thing I did before to do the intro, prompt, follow-up, and outro voice lines, but now also including the reveal voice line. And to do the clues, when searching for keys, I loop through each key with the number corresponding, from the first clue up to 10, and extract the subtitle if it's there. I then make the voice line file, obviously making sure they are named correctly so the clues come in the correct order, and that's the guessing questions done. And lastly, the writing questions. The writing questions include a bunch of hints that the wheel might say to aid the player in getting some of the possible answers. Thankfully, they work pretty much the same way as the guessing questions, albeit formatted slightly differently. I basically use the same code I use for the guessing questions. Since there can be up to 20 different possible answers, I set the loop size to 20 for this question type. And after a directory swap and a slight formatting change later, the writing questions are done as well. And that's it. The voice lines for all of the question types are done. Let's patch it into the game and see how it works. At first glance, you might think that the mod didn't work since a lot of the other lines haven't been changed yet, but once we get to a question...
Hey you Gregorians, check this out. Which of these months have 31 days?
Oh heck yeah, it's working. The text-to-speech voice reads through each line correctly. I've let it run through a whole game, and it worked. Even the guessing and writing questions work properly. Success! I was honestly surprised that I was able to make it this far into such a stupid project, but I guess if you put your mind into it, you can pretty much accomplish anything, I guess. The next day, I even decided to make the program into a Windows application with a user interface and everything, to make using the program a lot more user-friendly. I can select the game directory, output directory, text-to-speech voice, and what question types to do. A lot more user-friendly than having to do it through a console. If you're wondering what the miscellaneous lines file text box and miscellaneous lines checkbox are for, I'll get to that very shortly. In fact, speaking of those lines... This program has been a success and has gone rather smoothly so far, but when it came to do some of the other lines, things weren't looking as smooth as I hoped. I've got all of the lines done for every single trivia question in the game, but in order to complete this project, I have to do all of the other voice lines as well. The rest of the voice lines are all included in this talk show export folder under the folder named Media. And you see that correctly, there are 1,666 voice lines in this folder, which represent all of the voice lines not counting questions in the game. Unfortunately, there's no handy little jet file in this folder that contains the subtitles for each of these voice lines. Nothing that I can use to get by this part easily. I was baffled that I could not find a way to get the subtitles required to make these files. Clearly, the game has them somewhere, but where? I looked around the game files for a while, looked in every jet file, nowhere. I've also noticed that the game has all of these SWF files, which is very strange since I know them as Adobe Flash files. Flash was discontinued by Adobe in 2020, yet a game, made in 2021, still uses Flash. I found that strange, but I digress. I then came to the realization that maybe, just maybe, the game stores the subtitles for these lines in one of these Flash files. The question is, how do I access them? Thankfully, I found a program called JPEXS that will allow me to look at the contents of these Flash files, and lo and behold, in the start.swf file, I noticed something. At first, it might not look like there's much in this file, but pay attention to this dict:*string constant down here. If I scroll to the right, there they are. The subtitles for those lines are here. I decided to copy the contents of this string into a text document, and after removing some of this other stuff, there you go, a list of the subtitles for these lines. Before I got too ahead of myself, I want to make sure they are in the same order as the audio files from inside the folder. The first audio file has this line, but when I looked into the subtitles I extracted, that's a completely different line. Yeah, this wasn't too promising. The subtitles the game has stored in the flash files are out of order with the audio files in the media folder. Great. Back to square one, I guess. At least I know where the subtitles are for when I want to change them in the future. So I tried to think of another way to automate this process. Then I had this crazy thought pop into my head. You want to know what came in my head? What if I used speech recognition? Yeah, that's a crazy thought, you know. The speech library I use for speech synthesis also includes a speech recognition engine, so I looked into using that. One worry that I was having was that speech recognition isn't perfect, and it's not going to get the lines perfectly, but I decided to go with it anyway. I guess I wasn't going to lose much if I went with it. What I did was I looped through every audio file in the media folder, have the speech recognition engine try to recognize what was said in each audio file, and have it output some text, which represents what it thought it said. Since we have text, I can just feed that text into my text-to-speech audio file creation code to export the audio files with the same names, and that's it. Surprisingly easy. It took around 20 minutes to run, since speech recognition takes quite a bit of resources to work its magic. But after it's done, I decided to replace the audio files in the game with the files this program generated and decided to test it. And when I did, I'll let this one speak for itself.
You'll have traveled to the seeker at the mountaintop, to seeking answers from the all-know, when wheel of enormous proportions. You may not ask the wheel anyone in question, that torments to a very soul. Then was that the wheels of enormous proportions awaits. I know I'd look like a really big whale, but Axel, a few guys are just extremely small. Tested the ones that fit the trout.
Yeah, the audio files didn't seem to come out right. I was expecting this was gonna happen, but not this badly. I think that's another idea busted. I'll still save these audio files though, cause these might come in handy if I want to do an April Fool's version of this game. Shh, don't tell anyone. So everything I was trying was hitting a dead end. That means I unfortunately came to the grueling realization that the only option was to have to do this part manually. I really wasn't looking forward to this, but at the time, this was what I thought was the only option. So I went with it. After coming to that realization, I thought of some ways to make this grueling part a little easier. One thing's for sure, I'm not going to go through each audio file one by one, figure out what it says, and put what it says through my speech generation program. The only problem with this approach is that it's subject to human error, and over the course of over 1,600 voice lines, I'm pretty sure I'll make a mistake somewhere in that process. Like I'll skip over a voice line file, or I'll do the same voice line twice, which I will not notice until like a few hours in. Secondly, this will take hours. Many hours. Of having to open each audio file and figuring out what it says. Come on now, I'm not that insane. Instead, I want to take an approach that will be as painless as possible, but will also give me the opportunity to modify those voice lines whenever I want in the future, and also be able to generate them with my program at will, which is what I planned to do when I made my program into an application. You see what those elements of my program are for now? Now you know. Let's not beat around the bush too much. You want to know my approach? I wanted to create a text file that maps each audio file with its associated voice line, something like this, and would include every single audio file with its respective voice line. And that's right, all 1,666 of them. How will I create this text file, you ask? One thing's for sure, it's not going to be done with the approach I explained had problems. That's highly prone to human error and would take forever. Guess what I'm gonna make? Yes, that's right. I'm making another program that will do this for me. See the amount of programs I'm gonna make. And here is what I made to do this very task. I can set the game directory up here, which is where it will get its audio files from, where it will save the text file, the text-to-speech voice, and a few buttons on the bottom. How this works is when I click start, it goes into the media folder I was talking about with all the audio files in it, and it plays them sequentially, one by one, starting from the top all the way down to the bottom. So right now, it's playing the first audio file in the folder. I can type in what the wheel said for that line in this text box. I can have the text-to-speech voice read it out by clicking the test voice button. And when it's good, I click next and it will move on to the next audio file. If I didn't quite get what the wheel said for this line, I can click the repeat button and it will play the audio file again. I'll go through a few of these, and once I've done a few, I can click save and it will save what I typed to a text file on the desktop. I can open the text file, and as you can see, there's that exact format I was talking about. If I want to keep going, I click start again and it will pick up where I left off. I can do 2 more and you can see them get added to the text file. Now, I've done this already like 2 months ago, so I won't go for all 1,666 of them. But when I did, boy did it take a while. Let's go over what I did 2 months ago. I woke up one day when I thought of this idea to make this program, started working on this program in the morning, had it set up and ready to go in the early afternoon, and to go for all 1,666 voice lines, let's just say it took me all the way until midnight before I got to the last one, no joke. Here's what the final text file looked like when I was done. Make whatever joke you want, but it was long. It was a long boy. And I was so glad when it was done and over with. Now I did use those subtitles I extracted from the game earlier to help me out a little bit, especially for some of the longer lines, like for the credits. Either way, having all of these voice lines done in one day was a pretty serious accomplishment, and if I went any other way, I might have not been able to finish this project, but in the end, it was done. Now that I have this text file, I made a change to my program so that it will now read through this text file, and it will make all of the voice lines for those media audio files for me. And that's it. All of those miscellaneous voice lines are now created. I patched those into the game, and pretty much the entire game is converted over to TDS now. Or so I thought.
Hey, how about a spin from a new spinner?
Wait a minute. I missed a couple of voice lines. Where are these from? I'm pretty sure I replaced every single audio file. Why did I miss these lines? If you remember what it said at the very beginning of the video, another thing is that all of the voice lines in the game, actually most of them, but I'll get to it later, are exposed in the files as audio files in the OGG format. Turns out, there's a few more voice lines hidden away. Specifically, the voice lines that play when you're about to spin the wheel, and also the voice lines that read the room code on the join screen. After a little bit of research, they exist within this bang file. Oh great. It's time to pull out a Jackbox modder's best friend, Fmod Bank Tools. If you didn't already know, Jackbox Games use the Fmod sound engine for its audio. You can see it shown when you start up any Jackbox game and party pack, shown here. It's hard to miss. Now thankfully, using Fmod Bank Tools, I can use it to extract all of the sound effects and music from a bank file, replace them with new sound effects and music, and I can rebuild them, so that they can be used within the game. This is how modders can change some of the sound effects and music within Jackbox games, or other games that use Fmod for their sound engine. So I decided to extract the audio files from this specific bank file, and lo and behold, those are the voice lines that were missing. And what I can do now is replace these voice lines with the text-to-speech voice. I did this manually since there weren't too many voice lines to change, and most of them were just the wheel saying letters. Once that was done, I rebuilt the bank file to now include these new lines, passed it into the game, and now those voice lines are TDS as well. I can tell the game to read the room code, and it's a TDS voice. Amazing! setting up for a spin,
Next
and we
spin.
got that too.
I'm not
I think we really
I
got
promise.
everything now. And before I reveal the final result, I really gotta make one last change to the game for this mod to feel complete. Perfection. And now for the moment you've been waiting for. I can finally present to you the Wheel of Enormous Proportions, hosted by the MLG text-to-speech voice.
Infinite power.
Which of these are capital cities of South American countries? There's also a Wheel of Fortune card in there. Are you ready for something shiny? Hey, how about a spin from a new spinner? Yes, yes. Oh wait, is it? Grinding to a halt, gradually slowing down, and can you believe you are about to play question 1 instead of making you just while riding tigers? But they get super dizzy and it's hilarious. I got a power slice with your name on it. There's more game to play yet. No. This is a truly awe-inspiring result. Hold this answer near and dear, little one.
Now that this project has seen its way for its completion, let's look back at what it did throughout it. It was a learning opportunity for me. For one, it was the first time I've ever modded a Jackbox game, perhaps any game in general. It was also the first time I've coded in C#, not in the Unity game engine, and the first time I made a desktop application using C#. Probably the biggest thing I could have done better, which is something I didn't know about until well into working on this video, was that I overlooked how the game associates each subtitle with each respective audio file. And there's actually a tool online made by the absolutely legendary Jackbox modder, the Darksider, that will make these associations for me in a text file if I feed it the contents of the start.swf file. Would have saved me a ton of time, but unfortunately, my brain wasn't there at that part of the project. One thing I did do after I did this project initially was to rewrite the program much more cleanly. I gave it a dark theme, the ability to use filters which remove certain characters from the subtitles, typically to remove any formatting present in the subtitles, and the ability to create voice line files for those fmod bang files I was talking about earlier, although you will still need to use fmod bang tools and have the original bang file from the game to rebuild them into the new and modified bang file. If you want to try out this program for yourself, I placed it and the source code in the GitHub repository in the description below. Just note that you will need to have the TDS voice you want downloaded to your computer in order for the program to generate audio files using it. Oh, and to finish on one last thing, I did contact the person who created that Wheel of Enormous Trolling mod I talked about before, and they actually did update the mod with the new voice lines, so I can officially say it all wasn't for nothing. If you want to try the Wheel of Enormous Trolling mod for yourself, it is playable on the Happy Jews Twitch channel, an absolutely amazing community that I've devoted a lot of love and time into over the past year. I'll throw a link in the description. And on that note, that concludes my journey for a strange desire I had to make the Wheel of Enormous Proportions host use the MLG voice. Thanks for watching.